Hey everyone, it's Tobes, and welcome to your second monitor. It's Pride! Magic Presents Pride is a casual commander event Wizards has brought back this June. You build a commander deck, treating every eligible commander as though it has the partner keyword, because Magic is for everyone. Then you show up at your local game store and play Commander, hopefully against other Pride decks. This year, participants are supposed to receive this sweet foil Gilded Lotus promo, as well as an enamel pin of that lotus. Local game stores can schedule Pride events for June 5th through 14th in these select regions. And since that window has already ended, I hope you made it to one. But if you missed it, check with your local game store to see if they ran a Pride event and if they're planning to run a repeat. And if they aren't, ask them to. WPN locations are always looking for ways to get more players in store, after all, and they often have leftover promos to give out. And whether or not you get to play in a store-sanctioned event, you can still play your Pride deck as a Rule 0 deck anytime. Just ask your pod and shuffle up. This event was how I launched my channel last year, so my Monday deck techs during June will all be Pride decks. Anyway, let's get to it. Today our commanders are Breena the Demagogue and Aurelia the Law Above. This is actually a version of the deck that I played at the Pride event I attended, and I had a ton of fun with it. After all, what's better for sitting down with a group of strangers than talking politics? I'm excited to show you what I put together for these two, but before we get started, let's go over our deck building template. I like to build my decks around my commander. I want to show off why it's such a cool card and why I put it at the head of my deck, and in this case, why I put them at the head of my deck. So I take about 30 cards and put them toward whatever my commanders ask of me. This is our game plan. It's what we do at the table and how we try to win. 30 more cards go towards supporting that game plan in the form of card advantage, acceleration, and interaction pieces. I usually run 1 or 2 sweepers, sometimes more if it would play into the game plan, sometimes none at all, and I almost always keep to a floor of 38 lands. That way I can always hit my land drops and cast my spells and, play commander. So let's talk about our commanders. Breena the Demagogue is a 1/3 legendary bird warlock for 1, a white, and a black. Breena flies and says whenever a player attacks one of your opponents, if that opponent has more life than another of your opponents, that attacking player draws a card and you put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature you control. While Aurelia says, Aurelia is a 4/4 legendary angel for 3, a red, and a white, with flying, vigilance, and haste, and says whenever a player attacks with 3 or more creatures, you draw a card, and whenever a player attacks with 5 or more creatures, Aurelia deals 3 damage to each of your opponents, and you gain 3 life. So, what do our commanders have in common? They both care about everyone at the table attacking, not just us. Aurelia's abilities trigger whenever a player attacks, so she doesn't just encourage us to make wide swings, she wants us to give our opponents reasons to do the same. And that's where Breena comes in. She triggers whenever anyone attacks our opponents, so when our opponents attack each other, they get to draw a card while we put counters on our creatures. She won't trigger if the player being attacked is the player with the lowest life total, or tied for it, so she doesn't allow for picking on whomever is already the most hurt. And she doesn't trigger when we're the one getting attacked. That means if our opponents want cards, they need to go after each other. And if they go wide, Aurelia gives us a card and maybe a free lightning helix that hits everyone. But both of our commanders want us to attack too. With enough creatures in play, Aurelia gives us cards and direct damage and life gain whenever our battalion swings in. She doesn't have to be part of the attack herself, but her keywords give us 3 reasons for her to lead the charge. Flying means she's likely not to trade with opponents' creatures when she swoops in, Vigilance leaves her untapped so we won't die on the crackback either, and Haste lets us take advantage of all this the same turn she comes in, assuming we've deployed enough troops by that point. Meanwhile, we get a Breena trigger for each opponent we attack who doesn't have or share the lowest life total among our opponents. As with Aurelia, we don't have to attack with Breena herself in order for her ability to trigger, but if we do, and we put the counters we receive on her, she attacks as a 3-mana, 3/5 flyer that draws us a card. There are plenty of good places to put her counters, but she's a solid choice for them herself. So, how do we round out a deck that cares about everyone going to combat? We have 2 major angles we're taking: politics and Goad, or perhaps the carrot and the stick. We want to encourage our opponents to make choices that benefit us, so we offer options that benefit them too. Not only can they get a card from Breena when they attack our other opponents, we can give them counters as well, in addition to treasures, token creatures to add to their board, evasion and combat enhancements for the creatures they attack with, and even cards beyond the one they get from Breena's trigger. We can strike deals at the table, making promises and watching allegiances shift. We don't play the puppet master by controlling our opponent's turns or using permission style effects, but rather we incentivize them to share combat amongst themselves, gifting them short-term gains that lead to our eventual victory. And sure, they can still come after us if they want, but not only does that mean they don't get the incentives we offer, thereby putting them behind opponents who do play ball, it also runs them the risk of being offered no further alliances in the future. Really, our deals are to everyone's benefit, but the choice is always theirs. The other angle to our deck helps our opponents understand that when it comes to politics, no one's really able to sit things out. Goad is a mechanic that obliges creatures to attack if they're able, at least for one turn cycle, and prevents them from attacking us if they have any other choices. Technically, Goad forces creatures to attack players other than us if they're able to, meaning their controllers can't send goaded creatures at planeswalkers or battles in lieu of opponents. This is a great mechanic that keeps people attacking, which not only moves the game along, it also pushes our opponents to seriously consider their options every turn, both in terms of the creatures on their playmats and the players at the table. Maybe it leads to them making deals of their own, temporary or otherwise, and thereby gets everyone talking and plotting and engaging with their fellow players. And whenever they finally turn their cards sideways, we reap the rewards. I don't typically build decks like this for the channel because I know not everyone has a consistent play group, which is where politics-style decks work best, but man is it fun. In the same way our cards encourage opponents to commit to attacking each other, our deck encourages us to talk to our opponents about the game in its entirety. We're inclined to look at the whole board, and in speaking to other players about it, it makes everyone lean back in their chair to take in this game in the same broad strokes as we are. One of the secrets to tabletop gaming, from TCGs like Magic, to RPGs like D&D, to even board games from Monopoly to Betrayal at the House on the Hill to Twilight Imperium, is that the more players are invested in each other's turns, the more fun the whole group has. A deck with a strategy like Politics or Goad or Group Hug, anything that gives players a reason to care about each other's turns beyond just how it impacts their own chances at winning, enhances the game for everyone. And that's what our winged commanders do. They give us a way to make everyone's game better. We don't drag anyone to the negotiating table. They decide for themselves how much they want to take advantage of what we've brought. We're just prepared to influence things, maybe a bit, a little nudge here or there. No stress, no tension, no high-pressure tactics, just a little bit of free advice. You'll enjoy this deck if you want to try a playstyle that benefits from the social dynamics of Commander while still having a combat-based win con, or if you like the idea of orchestrating team-ups and truces, no matter how tenuous, as you help your opponents defeat each other on your behalf. So, as usual, this Moxfield list we're going over today is linked in the video's description. At the bottom of it, you will see a considering section, filled with cards that I considered putting in the deck, but ultimately which, for me, did not make the cut. However, if you have a bigger budget or a smaller one, if you like what I've done here and you want to go harder into it, or if you're interested in emphasizing more of what I've done in one way and less in a different one, that considering section is a great place to begin when you build your own Breena and Aurelia deck. So let's begin. We're going to start with our politics cards first. These are all cards that somehow, in one way or another, give our opponents options or change the dynamic at the table in a way that people can sort of opt into or out of. So yeah, we'll talk about Curse of Opulence first. This is a single red mana for an Aura Curse enchantment that enchants a player. So we choose probably one of our opponents. We can choose ourselves, but we should probably choose one of our opponents to enchant with this. For only a single red mana, we get an aura on them that says, whenever an enchanted player is attacked, create a gold token. Each opponent attacking that player does the same. A gold token is a treasure token you don't have to tap to activate. So it's just sacrifice it, get a mana of any color. So a free, slightly better than a treasure, whenever anyone attacks the player that we've enchanted with this, as well as us getting one too, that's pretty solid. Essentially, a free treasure if you attack someone other than me is not a huge benefit, but it's something of a benefit, and it can add up with our other things that we're doing, especially if someone was already going after that opponent. Maybe they're sort of the archenemy at the table at the time we cast this. Or maybe they're the one with the most threatening-looking commander if we're casting this early on. Good options either way. Next we have Noble Heritage. This is a background, a legendary enchantment that gives our commander a new ability. But because we have multiple commanders, it gives both of our commanders this ability. For 1 and a white, we get this enchantment that says, commander creatures you own have, when this creature enters and at the beginning of your upkeep, each player may put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature they control. For each opponent who does, you gain protection from that player until your next turn. Meaning, until our next turn, any of our opponents who've chosen to put those 2/1/1 counters on one of their creatures, they can't target us with anything, damage us with anything, or enchant us with anything like an aura enchantment of their own. Now, they can get our permanents, they can target any of our spells, whatever it may be, but they can't go after us. So lightning bolt can't hit our face. If they have their own Curse of Opulence, we can't be targeted by it or enchanted by it, and so forth. And if we have both of our commanders in play, we're going to get a trigger from both of them at the start of our upkeep, and of course when they enter, if this is already in play once they enter. What's especially nice is it says each player. So that means we get to do the same thing. We get to put 2/1/1 counters on one of our creatures, which is already what Breena is doing whenever we get a Breena trigger. So we might as well get more of it and make Breena even bigger so that she can attack better, or make Aurelia bigger so she can attack and block bigger, or just any of our other creatures. What's especially nice is it says we gain protection from each opponent who does so, rather than each player. So if we put counters on our creatures, we don't gain protection from ourselves. So pretty good. Next up is Tenuous Truce, a really fun one from New Capenna Commander. I think this was technically one of the set booster cards, not actually in the Commander precons. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So this is 1 and a white for an aura that, again, enchants an opponent. It's not a curse, but it's just an aura. And it says at the beginning of enchanted opponent's end step, you and that player each draw a card. Cool. And when you attack enchanted opponent, or a planeswalker they control, or when they attack you or a planeswalker you control, sacrifice this aura. So, during their end step, we both get a card. Until one of us attacks the other or a planeswalker we control. That's fine. That means, hey, do you want a truce? I can reward you mechanically for a truce, rather than just having an alliance at the table and saying, we're okay with each other for now, but who knows about the future. Anyone can break that truce at any time, but it behooves our opponent to hang on to it until their end step, which means they're likely not going to be the one that breaks it unless they want to not draw that card this turn. And drawing a card every turn at your end step seems like, oh, well, it is a card, but it's only during my end step. Is that worth it? Yeah, because that's the Monarch mechanic. And the Monarch mechanic is one of the most fun ways to play Commander, to play multiplayer Magic. Just getting a free card every turn, even if it's on your end step, is enough of an incentive to attack people to get the Monarchy. So you might as well get it every turn as long as you don't attack one person, which means that it's encouraging them, if they attack, to attack other people. Neat. Next up, we have Agitator Int. This is 2 and a red for a 2/2 insect that says, at the beginning of your end step, each player may put 2 +1/+1 counters on a creature they control. Goad each creature that had counters put on it this way. So this is kind of similar to our Noble Heritage, except it triggers at the end step, and everyone can put 2/1/1 counters on one of their creatures, similarly to Noble Heritage, but rather than making it so any opponent who does that, we get protection from them, whatever creature they choose to put the counters on is going to be goaded. So they're not going to put those counters on any of their creatures unless they plan to attack with that creature or think that they should attack with that creature during their next turn. Or if they have another way to tap it down. Maybe that creature has an activated ability that lets it tap. Or they have a Springleaf Drum in play that they can use to tap that creature down and gain mana. Or a vehicle or a spacecraft that they want to station. Something along those lines. You can't attack with a tapped creature, so even if a creature is goaded, if it's already tapped when it comes time to declare it as an attacker, obviously you can't. So that's why the Goad says they attack if they are able. So yeah, Agitator Ant is a great way for us to, of course, put counters on our stuff, but also make our opponent's stuff have to attack. We're going to talk more about Goad soon, but this way to give people a choice whether or not they want to let their creatures be goaded in exchange for making those creatures a little bigger, that's what makes this a politics card. Next we have Duelist's Heritage. This card does an incredible amount of work. 2 and a white for an enchantment that says whenever one or more creatures attack, you may have target attacking creature gain double strike until end of turn. So notably, it does not say whenever one or more creatures you control attack. So every combat, when any creatures attack, we get to decide whether or not one of those creatures gets double strike. We don't have to give any creatures double strike if we don't want to, and we can only choose attacking creatures, but it's nice that we don't have to choose this at the start of combat, but rather once attacking has already been declared. So what we can do is make a deal with someone. We say, look, I've got this Duelist Heritage. When you attack, if you attack my opponent, I'll make sure your big creature gets double strike. So at least they get, even if they get blocked, they're probably not going to trade because of the first strike damage. And if they don't get blocked, you're going to be doing double damage with that creature. The opponent is probably going to say, yeah, that sounds good. What's great though is, and this actually happened to me the other day when I got to play at the Pride event with this deck, I had an opponent in exactly that situation. I said, if you attack my opponent and you say you won't come after me for a turn cycle, then I'll give your attacking creature double strike. But I won't give it just double strike. But I didn't say I won't give double strike. I said, I will offer you this if you make me this promise. And they said, it's tempting, but I won't make the promise. And I said, okay, I'll give your creature double strike anyway. And they're like, oh, I didn't make the promise. And I'm like, yeah, but now you're doing double damage to my opponent. And everyone else at the table goes, oh, because they understood when you're getting people to attack each other, even if they're not like making a deal with you in the process of it, they're still doing the work for you. It's such a fun moment when people get to see like, oh, this is about like the long game. It's not just getting a benefit from what you're trying to do in that moment. It's recognizing that whatever happens in that moment benefits you in the long term as well. Anyway, this is just a fun card to use because, of course, it works on our turn too. So why wouldn't we give our creatures double strike? Double strike protects creatures. It makes them do double damage. If they are able to do first strike and then regular damage. Yeah, it's great. Also, I should just mention, Duelist Heritage is a card that even though it triggers or can trigger every turn, people always forget about it. They do their combat math. They're like, all right, I'm attacking for this much damage. And I'm like, but maybe double on that creature. And they go, oh no, you're right. So it's just fun. Next up, we have Orzhov Advocist. This is 2 and a white for a 1/4 human advisor that says at the beginning of your upkeep, each player may put 2 1/1 counters on a creature they control. You see the theme? And if a player does, creatures that player controls can't attack you or planeswalkers you control until your next turn. So this is not the same as Noble Heritage, because it doesn't give us protection from that creature's controller, but it does mean that creature and all the other creatures that its controller controls can't attack us or our planeswalkers. So we can still be affected by that player or even damaged by them, even by their creatures, just not by being attacked by them. But if they have like a pinger ability, we can still be targeted by them. They just can't be declared as attackers against us or our planeswalkers. And again, it's each player. So we're not able to attack ourselves anyway. So we get to get those counters just cuz. Maybe the Advocist becomes a 3/6. We don't even intend to attack with it. It's just a huge, great blocker so that if our opponents do attack us, we can handle it. This is great. Next, we have Combat Calligrapher. 3 and a white for a 3/3 bird cleric with flying. We've actually got a nice little sub-theme of flyers in this deck. It's pretty great. And it says, Inklings can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. Nice, so we're just protected from Inklings. Who plays Inkling decks? With Combat Calligrapher in play, everyone does. Because whenever a player attacks one of your opponents, that attacking player creates a tapped 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token with flying that's attacking that opponent. So every time we attack any of our opponents, again, it's opponents, not necessarily things they control like planeswalkers. If we attack an opponent, we get a free 2/1 flyer that's tapped and attacking that opponent. If we attack 2 opponents, we get a trigger for each opponent we're attacking. So we get 2 little Inklings. If our opponents attack each other, they get these Inklings as well. And then, if the Inklings stick around, Inklings can't attack me, or can't attack us, or planeswalkers we control. So great. In addition, even if that were to not be the case, this could block an Inkling and be fine. But while the Combat Calligrapher's in play, no Inklings are coming at us. So we're getting to give our opponents creatures that they can only really use against each other. And those creatures can certainly block our creatures, but by the time we're attacking with Breena and Aurelia and the Combat Calligrapher, these Inklings are not going to be big enough to deal with our creatures. We can just deal with them. So yeah, pretty good. Next, we have Firemane Commando. This is sweet. This is 3 and a white for a 4/3 Angel Soldier with flying that says, whenever you attack with 2 or more creatures, draw a card. It's only us, but this is another form of card draw, when both of our commanders give us card advantage, this is another flying angel that gives us card advantage that works in tandem with Aurelia. Aurelia wants us to attack with at least 3 creatures, often with as many as with 5 or more. Fireman Commando says, well, as long as it's just 2, then you get a card. And whenever another player attacks with 2 or more creatures, they draw a card if none of those creatures attacked us. So they can't attack us with anything, but as long as they attack with 2 or more, they get to draw a card. And they don't even have to send those 2 creatures to the same person, just so long as none of them are coming at us. Neat. So more cards for our opponents if they attack someone other than us, plus cards for us. Next up, we have the Frontier Warmonger. This card is really fun. It's 3 and a red for a 4/4 human warrior, so a 4/4 for 4 is already good, but whenever 1 or more creatures attack one of your opponents or a planeswalker they control, those creatures gain menace until end of turn. This is terrific. This plays a little bit like Duelist's Heritage. The idea that if our opponents are going to be incentivized to attack each other anyway, we just have to remind them, like, hey, you don't have to attack me. You can, but if you don't, the creatures that are attacking someone other than me gain menace. And menace is such a brutal, evasive ability. It can mean sometimes that the attacking creatures can't be blocked at all. Maybe the opponent only has 1 creature they can block with. Maybe they were planning on that. Then we drop the Frontier Warmonger, pass to our more aggressive opponent, other opponent that is, and the aggressive person attacks the opponent that only has 1 creature, meaning all their creatures are unblockable. As long as they're not attacking us, any of their attacks against opponent or planeswalker get menace, as well as all of our creatures are going to get menace when we attack. Great. Next is Nelly Borka, Impulsive Accuser. 2 a red and a white for a 2/4 legendary human detective with vigilance. 2/4 vigilance, that's pretty alright. And when Nelly attacks, we suspect target creature, and then goad all suspected creatures. A suspected creature, suspected is a status that a creature can gain, and they just have it until they either leave the battlefield, of course, or until some effect unsuspects them. There are effects that can do that in the game, but generally, and in our deck especially, we don't have any of those. So if we suspect a creature, it's going to be suspected for basically as long as it's in play. And what does suspected mean? It means that that creature has menace and can't block. Not this turn, they're just always unable to block, and they always have menace for as long as they are suspected. Like I say, suspected doesn't go away unless you have an effect that makes it go away. So Nelly attacks, we make a creature suddenly able not to block anymore, because suspected creatures can't block, and that creature has menace, which means it's hard for them to be blocked. And then Nelly goads every creature that's suspected, which includes that creature, so we know that next turn, when that player's next turn, the controller of that creature, if they can, they will have to attack with that creature. They won't be able to attack us, and that creature will have menace. So this sets us up to essentially be protected from a creature. It makes it so we are evasive, because the creature that could have blocked with maybe cannot block since it's suspected, and it's going to be goaded, which lasts for 1 turn cycle, but has menace, so they're attacking with it, so any other opponent that wants to deal with it is going to have to do so either with a removal effect or by blocking it with 2 creatures. And whenever 1 or more creatures an opponent controls deals combat damage to 1 or more of our opponents, we and the controller of those creatures each draw a card. So we can't stack this up with multiple creatures attacking multiple opponents, that kind of thing, and getting multiple cards, but still, 1 card every time combat damage gets dealt by an opponent to an opponent, then we get to get a card, and the attacking opponent gets to draw a card. That seems good, and it's likely to happen because Nelly is goading creatures whenever Nelly attacks. Sweet. Next up, we have Scriv the Obligator. This is from the recent, at time of recording, Secrets of Strixhaven Commander decks. This is the alternate commander for the Silver Quill deck after Killian. 2, a white and a black, gets us a 2/3 legendary Inkling bird. This is another bird, like Breena. I guess not exactly like Breena, it's an Inkling, so yeah, with flying and death touch. 2/3 flying death touch for 4, that's fine. Whenever Scriv enters or attacks, so this is a Titan trigger, on enter and attack, we make a white aura enchantment token named Contract. attached to target creature an opponent controls. That token has enchant creature, and whenever enchanted creature attacks, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn if it's attacking one of your opponents. Otherwise, its controller loses 2 life. So we get to choose whenever Scriv comes in or attacks, which of our opponent's creatures suddenly now has an aura on it that makes it bigger, gives it like a little baby, personalized trumpet blast whenever it attacks someone other than us, and costs them 2 life to attack us. So sort of a Norn's Annex kind of effect there, if you want to think of it that way. So yeah, again, it's not forcing them to attack someone other than us. It's just incentivizing them to, because if they want to do 2 extra damage to someone else, they can. Otherwise, they're going to take 2 damage of their own by losing that 2 life. So yeah, Scriv lets us get that over and over every time we attack with Scriv. Scriv is evasive and has pseudo-evasion in the form of Death Touch, because people typically, in a format like Commander where you have 40 life, they don't care about taking damage. They care about keeping the creatures that they spent mana on the battlefield. They had plans for those things. So if a Death Toucher attacks, especially one that doesn't have a huge power, most players are going to say, oh, I'll just take the damage. It's not your commander, so who cares? I don't want to lose my creatures. Unless they have like an indestructible blocker or a token they don't mind throwing away, Death Touch gives us a sort of pseudo advantage, even against their flyers. But remember, if we're attacking an opponent, as long as it's not the opponent with the lowest life among our opponents, or tied for that, Breena lets us put 2 counters on our creatures and draw a card. So we could put the counters on Scriv, and now Scriv is a 4/5 flying Death Toucher that puts one of these contract auras on an opponent's creature when it attacks. Yeah, sweet. Next we have Windborn Muse, just a classic. 3 and a white for a 2/3 spirit with flying. This says creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 generic mana for each creature they control that's attacking you. So it's Ghostly Prison, or Propaganda, but on a body. That body is a flyer, so again, we can pump it up with Breena. Even if we don't, it's an evasive creature, so we can attack with it and probably not have it die from blocking damage, which means we have the ability to trigger Aurelia by attacking with more creatures. And most importantly, it protects us. So it's political in a light way. It's really more of a protective effect, but it falls in this category because it's like, yeah, you don't have to attack me, but if you want to, you sure can. It's just going to cost you some mana, I don't mind if you want to pay the mana, go ahead. But this really protects us from a sort of wide board. So a nice effect. Oh, it's Prisoner's Dilemma. Oh, I love this card. This is literally the Prisoner's Dilemma, the game theory idea, as a card, and it's so cool. So 3 and double red gives us a sorcery that says each opponent secretly chooses Silence or Snitch, and then the choices are revealed. It's each opponent. We are not part of this. We're just letting everyone else do it. If each opponent chose Silence, Prisoner's Dilemma deals 4 damage to each of them. If each opponent chose Snitch, Prisoner's Dilemma deals 8 damage to each of them. So if it's unanimous, either way, people are taking 4 damage or 8 damage. But if it's not unanimous, Prisoner's Dilemma deals 12 damage to each opponent who chose Silence. So players are incentivized. I'm not gonna explain the entire Prisoner's Dilemma in this video. Look it up. It's great. It's just really a cool thought experiment. But so players are incentivized to all choose Silence, because if they do, they take the least amount of damage. They take 4. Obviously, not everyone's going to choose Snitch. They wouldn't choose to, because then they're taking 8 damage. But if you know that everyone's incentivized to choose Silence, then maybe you're the one person who chooses Snitch. Because if it's mixed, none of the Snitches take damage at all. Only the Silence choosers do. And they get to take even more damage. So if you know your opponents are likely to choose Silence, maybe there's a conversation at the table and everyone says, all right, we're all deciding we're going to choose Silence. In that moment, you've got a chance to betray everyone and ensure that everyone other than us who cast this and you takes 12 damage. 12 damage is a lot of damage. It's not quite a third of your starting life total. So, but if that happens, then maybe one other person chooses Snitch as well. And there's only one person who chooses Silence, so they're the only one who takes 12. And 2 people get by without having taken the damage at all. Or everyone chooses Snitch and everyone takes 8, which is 8 more than you were hoping to take when you decided to choose Snitch. So it's just a really fun card at the table that has one other feature that makes it brilliant, which is that it has flashback for 5 and double red. Because unless this just gets milled into our graveyard somehow, or we discard it or whatever, it's in our graveyard because we cast it once. And everyone is going to remember how everyone else voted when you cast it the second time. If you were the only person at the table who took 12 the first time, oh man, are you going to choose silence the second time? Probably not. Which means the likelihood of the people who chose snitch choosing silence the second time is pretty low. So you're guaranteeing, maybe, everyone chooses snitch the second time and everyone takes 8. Anyway, it's just really cool to see how the dynamics of this play out at the table. It is not the absolute best card to run in this deck for the game plan we're playing, but for the vibe of our deck and sort of the way that this deck is meant to make the table behave and feel, this is the best card to run. I love this card. It's so cool in this deck. Next, we have Shadrick's Silver Quill. Breena is from the original Commander 21 Silver Quill Precon, so I'm glad to see the Elder Dragon that college is founded by in this deck. The original Shadrick's, that is. This is 3 a white and a black for a 2/5 legendary Elder Dragon with flying and double strike. So 2/5 flying with double strike for 5, that's already pretty solid. And at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may choose 2 of these modes, and each mode must target a different player. We can target ourselves with these modes, and we do not have to choose anything. But we can certainly say, hey, I'd like to make a deal with you. Would you like me to give you a free Inkling, a 2/1 white and black creature that flies? Would you like me to give you a card, although it will cost you a life? Or would you like me to let you put a counter on each of your creatures? And we get to decide which of these things we want and which we're willing to give to someone else. And they can make a counter offer. They can say, yeah, I know that you're going to draw a card and lose a life, and you're offering me an Inkling, but I would much rather you just let me put a counter on each of my creatures. And we might say, okay, that's a fine deal for me. We don't have to make this deal with them. We can make it with someone else. We could be rejected by one player and offer it to another player. Most of the time, players are willing to spend a life to draw a card. Having a blocker or a evasive attacker is pretty solid, especially in our deck that's encouraging them to attack each other. So attacking or blocking that Inkling is useful. And just pumping up their whole team is also very strong. So all of these are good for us, and all of these are good for our opponents, so the chance of us not choosing 2 modes on our turn is pretty low. Yeah, plus, if we put 2 counters on all of our creatures, Shadrick's is suddenly a 3/6 flying double striker. Pretty good. Next we have Death Kiss. This is 5 and a red, for a 5/5 Beholder. Behold. That says whenever a creature an opponent controls attacks one of your opponents, double its power until end of turn. All they have to do is attack one of our opponents, and their power gets doubled. That's just a straight up bulk up, for free. And that's every creature that attacks an opponent. It's not whenever one or more creatures. It's any opponent, any different opponents with their multiple creatures, each of their creatures that attacks our opponents gets its power doubled, and that's great. We can also give this monstrosity X for XX and a red. What that means is if it's not monstrous, it becomes monstrous, and we put that many counters on it. So monstrous is something that a creature can only become once. It's sort of like suspected in the sense that it is a status that your creature can attain. And once it's monstrous, so this is essentially saying it's sort of like an exhaust ability, but an older type from original Theros block. So we can only use this once, since it will become monstrous when we do it, but we can pump as much mana into it as we have if we wish to, plus a red, of course. And when it becomes monstrous, we get to goad up to X target creatures our opponents control, which will trigger this when those creatures attack. Pretty good. Remember, by definition, or by default rather, goad only lasts for 1 turn cycle. But a pretty nice way to say we can make our 6/6 or our 5/5 for 6 bigger, make several creatures more likely to attack, because again, they might get around it somehow, but if they don't, they're going to have to attack, and a player other than us, and their powers are going to get doubled when they do. Pretty good. Next we have Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. This card completely changes the way games play. This card also ends games, and beautiful Jason Chan art. I really like Gisela. So 4 a red and double white, so 7 mana for a 5/5 legendary angel with flying and first strike. But Gisela's not really a 5/5, because if a source that would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, that source deals double damage to that player or permanent instead. So Gisela, if she's gonna do damage to a creature or opponent, a creature that an opponent controls or an opponent, she's actually doing 10 damage. And it's first strike damage, so even unless it's indestructible, only the biggest flying blockers are gonna survive Gisela. Or I guess other first strikers. Still, she's doing 10 damage, so those things are probably gonna, they probably won't survive even if they kill Gisela in the process. But if we're attacking with Gisela, do we not have Breena in play? So isn't she a 7/7 flying first striker that doubles all damage? I'm just saying, Gisela's good in this deck for combat. But it doesn't just apply to our creatures or Gisela herself. Anytime our opponents deal damage to another one of our opponents or a permanent any of our opponents control, including their own permanents technically, doubled that damage. It's crazy. This just absolutely goes out of hand for a way to end a game, especially if we're goading their creatures or incentivizing them with card draw or counters or whatever else to not attack us. But if they do attack us, if a source would deal damage to us or a permanent we control, prevent half that damage rounded up. Half that damage rounded up was relevant in that game I played when I went to the Pride event, because I was playing against an insects player who had suddenly a board of 21/1 insects. They attack, and I have Gisela. I prevented half of the damage of each of those things attacking, or that would have done damage to me, rounded up. Half of one rounded up is 1. So they all did no damage, or would have done no damage if that player hadn't responded by destroying Gisela and totally killing me. It was a great time. So yeah, Gisela is a terrific protection effect. It's a terrific way to do more damage to our opponents, whether from our sources or our opponent's sources, and thereby encourages our opponents to attack each other and disincentivizes them from attacking us or being aggressive against us anyway, because it also works on direct damage like lightning bolts and pingers. Teysa, Envoy of Ghosts, is the last card in this section. 5, a white and a black for a 4/4 legendary human advisor. So that's not great stats for a lot of mana, and Teysa has vigilance, but she doesn't have any evasive abilities. Just kidding, she has protection from creatures. Protection, again, protection protects against debt. DEBT, that's the acronym. Damage, attaching things, which is enchantments and equipment, enchanting and equipping, blocking, and targeting. So Teysa is completely evasive. She can't be blocked by creatures. She has protection from them. So Teysa is a 4/4 vigilant, unblockable creature that also has protection from creatures. So being that she's vigilant, she blocks all day long and cannot be dealt damage by those creatures because she has protection from them. If our opponents want to remove Teysa, they better do so with something that's not a creature source because she can't be targeted by them, and so forth. So yeah, Teysa is very powerful when it comes to combat just on her own. If we put 2 counters on her with Breena, she's a 6/6 vigilance, protection from creatures. Yeah, it's very good. But even better than that, whenever a creature deals combat damage to us, we destroy that creature and make a 1/1 black and white spirit creature token with flying. So this is the big incentive, or disincentive I should say, that our opponents have from attacking us. If they attack us, we might block, and Teysa probably will block. But if we choose not to, if we choose to let it do damage to us, they lose that creature, assuming it's not indestructible, and we get a 1/1 flyer, which doesn't just act as a nice chump blocker for us the next time they attack, but it lets us add more creatures to our board in our skies. So they're evasive, so it's more likely that when we attack with them, we're going to do damage. And whether or not we do damage, the more creatures we have attacking, the more likely we're going to be able to hit Aurelia's thresholds for her triggers. All we have to do is attack with 3 creatures, and we get to draw a card. If we attack with 5 creatures, we get to draw a card, and each opponent takes 3 damage, and we gain 3 life. So these little 1/1 flyers can really do a lot of good for us. If an opponent swings with a whole bunch of little tokens, we'll take the damage from all those tokens because they're all going to die, and we're going to get a token for each one that does. Yeah, Teysa's really great. Expensive, but great in this deck. And for the sort of, I don't know if she's running the Orzhov now, even though now, spoilers, Teysa is now a ghost herself, but like the Church of Deals, like Teysa Karlov, yeah, she's going to be in our politics deck. So that is our politics section. Next we have our Goad section. These are all cards that force our opponent's creatures to attack usually with the Goad mechanic, but not quite all of them. Starting with Bloodthirsty Blade. This is an equipment for 2 generic mana that does not have an equip cost. It says pay 1 and attach this equipment to target creature and opponent controls. Activate only as a sorcery. So essentially it is equipping, but it can only equip our opponent's creatures. And it gives those creatures +2/+2 and makes them goaded. So Bloodthirsty Blade does goad our opponent's creatures, does give them a little bit of a trumpet blast just for them, and we can only put it on our opponent's creatures. So once those creatures die, the Bloodthirsty Blade falls off, and we just 1 more mana to equip it to the next thing. And we just keep doing that for whichever creature we want to see our opponents attack with, but also whichever creature we want to see our opponents be unable to block us with. Or block each other with, even. Because if that creature is goaded, it's going to attack. So unless that creature has vigilance, it's not going to be untapped to be a blocker. It won't be untapped to use its tap abilities post-combat either. So Bloodthirsty Blade is a great, very inexpensive, both in the front load cost and the re-equip cost every turn, great way to sort of take a creature out of the game as far as we're worried about it. Not always the case. If they've got something like, a creature with a triggered ability like Tatiova, Benthic Druid, Tatiova will still do what she's doing, even though she's goaded and having to attack. But she'll be attacking as a 5/3 instead of a 3/3, and that's something that players are probably likely to want to remove. So that gets rid of a problematic creature, not just in terms of our being concerned with it for combat, but permanently, at least, as a permanent. And then we get the Bloodthirsty Blade back, and we get to use it for something else. We can move it around. We don't have to let a creature die in order to have the equipment fall off. We just do it as a sorcery and attach it to something else, which is something we can definitely do as a deal. We could be a jerk, and this, I'm not being judgy, be a little bit of a jerkbag and say, hey, help me out, or I'll put the Bloodthirsty Blade on your commander. Or we could be a little nicer and say, look, I've got the Bloodthirsty Blade on your creature, but I can move it. Let's make a deal. I'm happy to move it, as long as we come to a mutually beneficial understanding. These are possibilities. Next we have Grinzo Havoc Raiser. This is it's double red for a 2/2 legendary goblin rogue that says, whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we get to either goad a creature that player controls, or exile cards from the top of that player's library, and until end of turn, we can cast a card, it's not exile cards, it's exile the top card, and until end of turn we can cast that card and spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that spell. So it's mana of any color, so notably that's not mana of any type. So if we happen to exile something that requires colorless mana, not generic mana, but specifically colorless mana like an Eldrazi, we have to still spend colorless mana for those pips, because I'm sure you can understand, colorless mana isn't a color. So we can spend mana of any color to cast the spell, but we still have to spend colorless mana to do so for the specific colorless requirements of its cost. That's the difference between effects like this that say you can spend mana as though it were mana of any color and mana of any type. Work a little differently. However, usually we're not doing this. We don't need to steal our opponent's stuff. We can. That's Grenzo's deal. But we don't have to. Oftentimes, we're just saying, oh, we did damage with 3 of our creatures. We're going to goad 3 of your creatures. And so you can get angry about the damage we did, but you're going to have to take that anger out on a different player. Next, we have another background. It's Popular Entertainer. 1 and a red for a legendary enchantment background that gives our commanders, whenever 1 or more creatures we control deal combat damage to a player, goad target creature that player controls. So this does say 1 or more. So normally, with Popular Entertainer, this happens and we get to goad 1 creature. But if we have both of our commanders in play, they're both going to get a trigger from this. So we're going to be able to goad a target creature that player controls for each of our commander's triggers. Nice. Spectacular Showdown is next. There are several different versions of an effect like this. This was my favorite one, and not just because of the rules text, but because this art is so rad. This is just such a cool, it feels so Dungeons & Dragons, it feels so fantasy. I really like this. D&D relevant because this is from Battle for Baldur's Gate. So 1 and a red gives us a sorcery that says put a double strike counter on target creature. Then goad each creature that had a double strike counter put on it this way. Double strike counters mean it's got a counter on it that now gives it this ability, this keyword ability. That creature's gonna have double strike for as long as it has that counter on it, which may mean the rest of the game. And then we goad that creature. So it's a double striker, permanently essentially, that is gonna be goaded until the end of our next turn, or until our next turn rather. So it's gonna have to attack if it's able, and attack a player other than us if it can, and it'll do so with double strike. And that's all fine for 2 mana, but we can also overload this for 7 mana, 4 and triple red, meaning every creature gets a double strike counter and is goaded. This is sort of Avatar of Slaughter, I think, is the effect we're looking for here. Each creature has double strike and attacks each combat if able. This only lasts for 1 turn cycle, but still. What's really nice about this is we can gain advantage of this ourselves if we're planning to attack by casting this pre-combat. That means all of our creatures gain double strike, but then they are goaded. We have to attack with them this turn if we want to. But if we do, they've got double strike. However, every other creature in play has double strike, so having the first strike part of the double strike is not going to really help us that much. But what we can do is cast this post-combat in our post-combat main phase. If we don't get another combat phase that turn, then every creature, including ours, gets a double strike counter, but all the other creatures on the battlefield are goaded, and ours are too, but ours are only goaded until our next turn. So at the start of our next turn, they stop being goaded, so we don't have to attack with them. So that we can play it either way. Usually doing this post-combat is better, but if we want to get that double strike, with our creatures and don't mind them all having to attack this turn, then we have the ability to do it pre-combat too. Next, we have Agitator Ant. We've already seen it. It lets our opponents put 2/1/1 counters on one of their creatures at our end step and goad each creature that had the counters put on it. Redemption Arc is a goad removal spell. This is 2 and a white for an aura that enchants a creature and makes that enchanted creature indestructible, and it goads them. So this is not goaded until our next turn. That creature it is goaded, so it remains goaded for as long as it's got Redemption Arc on it. So it will always have to attack. It can't attack us. It has to attack a different player, and it's indestructible. So we can say, all right, would you like to make a Faustian bargain with us, opponent? I can make your commander indestructible, but they'll be goaded. They won't be able to attack me until we're the last player in the game. And they might say, yeah, go for it. And we'll say, okay, Redemption Arc. Your commander is doing a good job now, working for the Ravnica Magicological Detective Agency, whatever it's called, from Murders at Karlov Manor. And yeah, they're gonna work pretty well. They're gonna be protected. They're gonna have to keep attacking, but they probably would have anyway. And all that's fine until we're the last player in the game other than that creature's controller, at which point we pay 1 and a white and exile that creature. Redemption Arc will fall off, just go to our graveyard, but we got plenty of value out of it, hopefully, in the meantime. We've seen Nelly Borka. That's Nelly goads all suspected creatures every time Nelly attacks, because a suspected creature being goaded once only works for a single turn cycle. So if Nelly attacks the second time, we goad the new suspected creature and the previously suspected creature or creatures, and just keep them going and being goaded. Next, we have Vengeful Ancestor. This is 2 and double red for a 3/4 Spirit Dragon with flying. Spirit doesn't. This image doesn't give the impression that it flies, but it does fly. So don't forget your 3/4 flyer. It says when it enters or attacks, so another Titan trigger, we get to goad a target creature, and whenever a goaded creature attacks, whether they are goaded by the Vengeful Ancestor or by any other effect, it will deal 1 damage to its controller. So that means if we have Gisela in play, it's going to do double damage to its controller. If it has some kind of other effect on it that cares about the damage it does, for example, if it has Infect, it will do a damage in the form of a poison counter. But if it has Lifelink, it will do that damage, and its controller will also gain that damage, or that gain life equal to that damage as well. So it has done the damage, and they have gained life. And their life total remains the same. So consider Vengeful Ancestor maybe not goading Lifelinkers for other good reasons, because those Lifelinkers are going to just gain that opponent life. But yeah, if maybe you're goading something with a Shadow Spear on it or whatever, that's going to gain the opponent life anyway. But at least it's doing damage, trampling damage just to another opponent's creatures or that opponent. So yeah. We've seen Death Kiss lets us goad up to X target creatures our opponents control when we make it monstrous. And we have Geode Rager. This is a great one. 4 and double red for a 4/3 elemental with first strike. So remember, we've got plenty of creatures that have good keyword abilities, and they have either solid or maybe less than solid stats, but we have Breena in this deck, as well as several other effects we've already seen that put counters on our creatures, usually 2 at a time. So if Geode Rager were a 6/5 first strike for 6, pretty good. That would be great, right? Usually all we have to do is cast Geode Rager, go to combat, and attack one of our opponents that doesn't have the lowest life total. Breena will trigger, and suddenly that's exactly what we have. Great. In addition, Geode Ranger has Landfall. Whenever a land we control enters, we goad each creature target player controls. That's why this is such an expensive card, because all of our landfall triggers make an entire opponent's board unable to block us on our next turn unless they had Vigilance. Because we're targeting the player, not any of those creatures, so their hexproof won't protect them. And unless it's hexproof on the player, of course. And all of those creatures are going to have to attack next turn if able, and they can't attack us if there's any other players that are an option. Great. And that covers our Goad section. We have more parts to this deck that support our game plan and that can supplement it, and we're going to get to them in just a moment. But first, I have a question for you. Do you maybe feel like giving this video a like? You don't have to, but I would appreciate it. If you don't, though, or if you do, either way, I appreciate you being here. Thank you for watching and for joining me for this. So we're going to keep it going. We talked before in our template about the support sections of our game plan, so we're going to go to the first one of them, which is our card advantage section. As usual, I have tagged this as draw. It doesn't necessarily mean all these cards draw us a card, like the draw a card action. They just give us access to more cards. For example, Grenzo doesn't draw us a card, but can exile the top card of a player of our opponent's library when we do combat damage to that player, and fixes our mana almost perfectly and lets us cast that spell until the end of turn. So yeah, that's a possibility. We've got Mind Stone right here, which is 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for colorless mana. So this is just a really good mana rock for us. But we can pay 1, tap, and sack it to draw a card. So late in the game, if we don't need mana anymore, or even early in the game and we're desperate for card draw, we can cash this in for a card. Usually though, we're using this for ramp. Now I know you're thinking, Grenzo and Mind Stone are not terrific sources of card advantage. That's okay. Our commanders, both of our commanders, are repeatable card advantage engines. This deck draws so many cards that I didn't feel like I had to go super hard in this draw section because our commanders are giving us basically at least 1 card every turn, especially Breena gives us that. Starting on turn 3, if we've already gotten a creature into play turn 1 or 2, we're going to get to draw a card, an extra card every turn. So some of these cards are not necessarily like top tier card advantage, because we've got very high tier card advantage in our command zone, twice. We've seen Tenuous Truce, lets us draw a card at the end of the enchanted opponent's turn, at the same time they get to, for as long as it's in play at least. Lagomos Hand of Hatred is a weird inclusion in this deck, but there's a reason for it. 1, a black and a red, gives us a 1/3 legendary human shaman that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 2/1 red elemental creature token with trample and haste and sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So we get a temporary token. It's got haste, it has trample, which is only a little bit relevant since it's a 2/1. We could pump it up with Breena if we really wanted to, I suppose. But the important part of this is that it gives us a token that we can attack with this turn prior to our attack step. It gives us the token prior to the attack step. Meaning we can attack with it, and when we do, if it gets us up to 3 creatures or 5 creatures, then it can trigger Aurelia. That's why we want to have this. We want to be able to have a repeatable ability to trigger Aurelia and draw even more cards, or draw cards and do damage to our opponents, with that burn effect and gain some life. So Lagomos giving us the ability to do that every turn is pretty nice. If we pump up Lagomos, or our opponents just don't have blockers, we can attack with Lagomos themselves in addition to that token. Of course, once Lagomos no longer has Summoning Sickness. Because remember, this token's going to come in the same turn Lagomos does if we play Lagomos pre-combat, and that token has haste. So we can get more out of this card than just that single token every turn when it comes to getting our attack triggers if we wish to. If we don't wish to, though, Lagomos is a 1/3, just like Breena, so is a great creature for us to put counters on with Breena or something else to make it into a better blocker, and we're not losing out on a creature attacking because we probably weren't attacking with Lagomos anyway, since we've got this token to attack with. But when we need to attack with Lagomos, we've got it there to do it. So all of these are good options. But Lagomos is in this section because we can tap this creature and search our library for a card, put it in our hand, and shuffle only if 5 or more creatures died this turn. So this is Demonic Tutor. This is an incredibly strong effect, and we don't have to spend any mana for it, and all we have to do is tap a creature we likely weren't attacking with anyway. We can only do it if 5 or more creatures died this turn. That is not always likely to happen when we attack. Sometimes, though, if we have a bunch of creatures die, particularly tokens, like this token that Lagomos makes, we might be able to get up to 5 or more creatures dying. But notice it does not say, activate only if 5 or more creatures you control died this turn. It also doesn't say, activate only if 5 or more creatures died this turn, and activate only during your turn. So if we have opponents attacking each other, and 3 creatures attack, and they all get blocked, and one of them survives, 5 creatures died on our opponent's turn. As long as it's before the end of their turn, we can tap Lagomos and get our Demonic Tutor effect right then. I don't typically run tutors in my deck that aren't for lands, but this guy does a lot for us, and with the amount of combat happening at the table in a game that's running this, that has this deck involved, Lagomos we might be able to trigger a couple of times throughout the game, in addition to getting a free token we can use for attacking or whatever else we need. Even though it only lasts for 1 turn, we really only need it for the 1 turn. Attacking with this token triggers Breena, even if we have no other creatures attacking. So we attack with this token, draw a card, put 2 counters on something, maybe it's Breena, maybe it's Lagomos, or maybe we even want to throw the counters away in a permanent way and put them on the token so we can have a 4/3 attacker with Trample and Haste. Lagomos does a lot for us. Next up is Lauren of the Third Path. 2 and a white for a 2/1 legendary human artificer with vigilance that says, when Lauren enters, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment. So Lauren is a reclamation sage. We get a free enters trigger that lets us remove something, just disenchant it. That seems great. And then we can tap her, and we and target opponent each draw a card. I could have put this in the politics section technically, but being able to get repeatable card advantage and make deals with our opponents to give them those cards as well seems pretty good. In fact, I should put Lauren in the politics section. Yeah. So consider her in the politics section, we'll just say that. Next we have Firemain Commando, which we've already seen. Firemain Commando draws us a card whenever we attack with 2 or more creatures, and draws opponents cards whenever they attack with 2 or more creatures, as long as none of them are attacking us. Nelly Borka draws us a card when 1 or more creatures an opponent controls deal combat damage to 1 or more of our opponents. Also draws that attacking players, that player who controls the attacking creatures, a card. Next we have Angelic Sellsword. This card is so fun. It's so fun and good. I really like it. It's from Outlaws of Thunder Junction Commander. It is a strictly upgraded Serra Angel. And if you like classic Magic, you're going to love a Serra Angel, even if that Serra Angel is wearing a cowboy hat. Also, this is clearly a New Capenna Angel with the sort of Halo aura, Halo the substance and the kind of rocky wings. Yeah, it's just very cool. In any case, this is 4 and a white for a 4/4 Flying Vigilant Angel Mercenary. So everything I've said other than the word mercenary is just Serra Angel. That's great. And then there's 2 more abilities on this card. The first is, whenever this creature or another non-token creature you control enters, create a Thunder Junction Mercenary token, a 1/1 red mercenary creature that has the ability to tap at sorcery speed to give a target creature we control +1/+0 until end of turn. So a little bit of pump if we want, but really these mercenaries in this deck are tokens we can use to block with, or more likely, add to our attack, so that we add to our attack in the form of the number of attacking creatures, so that we get more Aurelia triggers. But we get one of these little friends with every one of our non-token creatures that enters, including the sellsword itself. So all of our creatures come in company with this creature in play. It's great. And then, whenever this creature attacks, if its power is 6 or greater, we draw a card. So how can we make this thing's power 6 or greater? Well, the obvious way is printed on the card. We have 2 of these mercenaries at sorcery speed, each give it +1/+0, and now it's a 6/4, flying vigilance, and we get to draw when it attacks. But Breena also gives +2/+2. So, in the form of those counters. Now, notably, if the sellsword attacks and triggers Breena's ability will go on the stack, but Angelic Sellswords will not if its power is not already 6 or greater. This is an intervening if clause. It's when it attacks, if its power is 6 or greater, you draw a card, not draw a card, not some other formulation. An intervening if clause means this ability will not trigger at all if its clause is not met when the trigger condition happens. So if we have Angelic Sellsword enter the battlefield, and then we attack with Breena, who's already in play, probably at that point, we can put her counters on the Sellsword so that when it can attack next turn, it will already be power 6 or greater. So that's normally the play pattern for the Angelic Sellsword. But if we don't want to go to that trouble, we can just get the Sellsword out, next turn, play any non-token creature, and now we've got 2 mercenaries, one for the creature that just came in and one for the Sellsword when it came in last turn. Oh, I guess we would have to have the second creature enter the same turn as the Sellsword, so that next turn, when the Sellsword can attack, we can also tap both of those mercenaries. So yeah, it's not that hard to get this to be power 6 permanently or temporarily, and it draws us a card every time we attack with it when it has that. Next, we've seen Shadrix. Pretty good. It can draw us a card and lose us a life as one of its 2 options when we go to combat on our turn. And finally, in this section, we have Sanctuary Warden. 1 more angel. It's 4 and double white for a 5/5 flying angel soldier that enters with 2 shield counters on it. Shield counters do have an inherent mechanical meaning. What they mean is a creature with a shield counter, when it would be dealt damage or be destroyed, you replace that event with removing a shield counter. Similar to a stun counter, you remove a stun counter from a tapped creature with stun counters on it instead of untapping it. Like when you would untap it, you remove a stun counter instead. Sanctuary Warden, with these shield counters, when someone would damage the Warden, whether it's in combat or with a lightning bolt or whatever it may be, instead of damaging it, you prevent that damage and you remove a shield counter. Or when someone would destroy it, like with a murder spell or something along those lines, instead of it being destroyed, you remove a shield counter from it. It replaces those events. But notably, if someone does 1 damage to this, it still takes a shield counter off, even if it wouldn't be lethal damage. It's just any amount of damage removes a shield counter, and any destroy effect removes a shield counter. That's how those work. Think of them as bubbles. You gotta pop both bubbles in order for the Warden to be affected by the effect. And whenever this creature enters or attacks, you may remove a counter from a creature or planeswalker you control. If you do, draw a card and make a 1/1 green and white citizen creature token. So, when this enters or attacks, it's another Titan trigger. We can remove one of its shield counters from it, and it will just arrive in company with a 1/1 token and draw us a card. It replaces itself. But we don't have to take counters off of it. We can remove a counter from a creature or planeswalker we control. We do have a planeswalker in this deck, so we could remove loyalty counters from it. Or any of these many counters. We have so many ways to put on our things, from Breena, from Noble Heritage, from Shadrix Silverquill. Any of these counters we're putting on our things, we can just pull one off, turn that counter into a 1/1 citizen, and draw ourselves a card. And that happens every time the Sanctuary Warden enters or attacks. Gives us a great use for our counters beyond just pumping up our stats. Nice. That is our card advantage section. Next up, we have our acceleration section, which as usual I have tagged as ramp. So we've seen Curse of Opulence. It lets us make a gold token whenever the player we enchant with it is attacked, whether by us or anyone else. And so does the opponent attacking it, if it is an opponent attacking. Notably, we don't get 2 gold if it's us attacking them. Soul Ring is next. Obviously, it's a single generic mana for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless. Yeah, this is a great card. Put it in your decks. It's so good. Wayfarer's Bauble, terrific in our Mardu deck. It's just Rampant Growth on a little cute artifact. 1 generic mana gives us an artifact that if we pay 2, tap and sack it, we get to Rampant Growth. Search our library for a basic land, put it on the battlefield tapped, and shuffle. We are paying the same cost as Rampant Growth for the exact same effect, and we don't even have to use green mana. We do have to spend 1 mana to get it out first, but there have been so many games where I've said, okay, turn 1, basic land, Wayfarer's Bauble. Turn 2, basic land, crack the bauble. Now I'm going into turn 3 with 3 mana already available to me, which is the play pattern for Rampant Growth in general. So yeah, love the Wayfarer's Bauble. Next, we've got an Arcane Signet, another basically auto-include, 2 generic mana for an artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity. So in this deck, white, black, or red. Great. An untapped mana rock for only 2 that taps for all of our colors. Of course, this goes in almost every deck. Felwar Stone is almost as good as the Arcane Signet, another 2 mana untapped artifact that taps for 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. So even if our opponents are playing nothing but blue and green and colorless, then this is still an untapped 2 mana rock that makes a mana for us that we can use for our generic mana costs, of which we have plenty in this deck. But if anyone is playing white, then this suddenly is a 2 mana untapped rock that makes our most represented color in our deck. If we've got white, black, and red sources among all of our opponents spread out among their playmats, then this makes all of our colors, and it is a second Arcane Signet for us. The same is true if somebody plays a Chromatic Lantern, or something that otherwise lets their lands tap for any color. Because if their lands can produce that mana, whether it's inherent to the land or from another effect, our Felwar Stone can produce that color of mana. Next up, Knight of the White Orchid. This is actually a catch-up card, but it's a strong one. Double white for a 2/2 human knight with first strike. So again, a very powerful keyword ability on a relevant sized body for its mana value. It says, when the knight enters, if an opponent controls more lands than us, we can search our library for a plains card, put it on the battlefield, and shuffle. Notably, it does not say a basic plains, so we have several dual-typed lands in this deck. We can find any of our basic plains, or any of those dual-typed lands that have plains as one of their 2 types, and we get to put it into play, and it does not say tapped. So if the land would enter tapped on its own, like that's printed on the land, then yeah, it'll come in tapped. But if it doesn't say that, we get to put it in untapped, and we've accelerated ourselves beyond where we were already. Now, it means we don't get to do any of this if the knight comes in and we have the most, or we're tied for the most lands among players in the game. But we're running white, black, and red. We're not running green. So the green is, from what I understand, the most popular color in Commander, generally is. It's got a lot of ramp in it. Getting Knight of the White Orchid out and being able to accelerate ourselves up to or closer to the green player is pretty likely. It's also the case that this sort of helps us out if we're simply not player 1. Because if we're the second player, we get to turn 3, and the first player has played their 3rd land. We go to turn 3 with 2 lands in play, both of which make white. We play Knight of the White Orchid. We don't have the most lands in play. We get to find a plains, put it on the battlefield untapped, if it's, not a land that would come in tapped on its own. And then we make our land drop for the turn, and now we have accelerated, and we have the most lands in play, even though we didn't at the start of our turn. So yeah, Knight of the White Orchid can do a lot of work for us, even if it's just a 2-mana first striker, a 2-mana 2/2 first striker, and it doesn't get us a land, that's still fine, because we can pump it up with Breena, we can use it to block or attack and get Aurelia triggers, still good in combat. Next we have Mind Stone. We've already seen it. It's another 2-mana untapped rock that we can tap for colorless mana, or we can cash it in later for a card. We've got all 3 talismans remaining. These are all the same card, except they make different colors of mana. They are 2-mana artifacts that tap for colorless mana, or they can tap for 1 of 2 colored mana if we're willing to let them do damage to us. Conviction gives us Boros mana, Hierarchy gives us Orzhov mana, and Indulgence gives us Rakdos mana, and all of these are fantastic. These are 2 mana untapped rocks that make colorless mana like a Mind Stone. But they can also make colored mana as long as we're willing to let them do damage to us. Now, how often would you let that happen? Well, ask yourself this. Let's say you have a spell in hand, and it requires black mana, and you don't have enough black mana unless you tap the Talisman of Indulgence for that black mana. That means you now need to tap this for colored mana in order to cast the spell, which means the difference between you casting a spell or not is you paying a life. So would you pay an extra life to cast 1 more spell every turn? I sure would. I would do it 6, 7, or 8 times in a game. Because even though that means I'm down 6, 7, or 8 life, it means I've cast 6, 7, or 8 more spells during that game, and it's only cost me an extra life to do so. It's great. And every time we don't need the mana to cast those spells, we just tap it for colorless. No big deal. These are the same as the Pain Lands, just in artifact form, and they're absolutely worth running every time. So yeah, I recommend the Talismans. So that is our acceleration section. Next up, we are going to our interaction section. Again, I've just tagged it as removal. It's a red deck. Its secondary color is red, so we're running Lightning Bolt. Lightning Bolt is from Alpha. It's a single red for an instant that does 3 damage to any target. Put Lightning Bolt in your red decks. People think that that 3 damage isn't enough to be relevant in Commander. Those people, I think, should play more Commander and should play Lightning Bolt when they do, because Lightning Bolt is incredibly efficient for burn and removal. It's only 3 damage, but 3 damage is enough to put combat damage over the top if it's not enough to just outright kill a creature. It's something that you can hit a lot of commanders with. Like, it's just, I shouldn't be advocating for Lightning Bolt. Please play Lightning Bolt. It advocates for itself. Incredible card. We're going to skip Path to Exile for a second and talk about Requisition Raid. This is a single white mana, but not really, because it's a spree card. Spree cards require you to choose at least 1 additional cost, but you can choose 2 of them or all 3 of them, whatever choice you want. At sorcery speed, you can pay a white and 1 to destroy an artifact, or destroy an enchantment, or put a 1/1 counter on each creature target player controls. So you could add additional 1s to do multiples of these, or pay a total of a single white and 3 to get all of these effects. So for 1 and a white to destroy an artifact or enchantment, that's a disenchant. But this is a disenchant at sorcery speed, of course, with upside. White and 2 to destroy an artifact and an enchantment, or to put a 1/1 counter on each creature. That's great. Pump up our whole board. But it also says target player, not just each creature you control. So we can also use this politically, much the way we might use Lauren, and say, hey, I'm going to cast a spell. Would you like me to put a counter on each of your creatures? If you agree to this, you just don't attack me for a turn cycle, something along those lines. Or you agree to attack, this opponent rather than the other opponent. And if someone says yes to that, you say, great, Requisition Raid, blow up your artifact, blow up your enchantment, and put a counter on each of your creatures. Or it can be an artifact on one person's board, an enchantment on another player's board, and put a counter on each creature of our third opponent. You never know. Requisition Raid is so flexible and useful to us. It's not instant speed, but it's very inexpensive and it can do a lot for us. Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares, I often say, are almost the same card. They are both a single white mana for an instant that exiles a target creature and gives that creature's controller a little kickback. Swords to Plowshares gives the creature's controller life equal to the creature's power, and Path to Exile lets that creature's controller rampant growth. They search for a basic, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So both of these are extremely powerful, unconditional, single mana, instant speed creature removal spells that exile the creature. The fact that they get a tapped basic or a little bit of life, even if it's a lot of life, I would Swords to Plowshares a Galta all day long, So yeah, both of these are extremely powerful premium removal spells. Put them in your deck. Next we have Fracture. This is the Secrets of Strixhaven Mystical Archive printing. You don't have to run that one, but it's not expensive right now and it's gorgeous. A white and a black for an instant that says destroy target artifact, enchantment, or planeswalker. So it's an instant for a white and 1 that destroys an artifact or an enchantment, that's just disenchant. The fact that we're making the 1 black so that we're also able to hit planeswalkers, that's great flexibility. So there we go. Anguished Unmaking, also very strong in this deck. 1 a white and a black for an instant that exiles target non-land permanent, and we lose 3 life. We don't mind losing the life, we've got plenty of ways to gain it. I mean, we gain 3 life every time we attack, or every time any player attacks with 5 or more creatures when Aurelia's in play. And this is exile, and it can hit any non-land permanent. Anguished Unmaking is a card I didn't used to put in my decks, but the price has dropped since Secrets of Strixhaven Commander recently. So yeah, now it's worth putting in. But I still run Emergency Eject. All right, ready for my spiel? Emergency Eject is underplayed in Commander. It's 2 and a white for an instant that destroys a non-land permanent and gives that permanent's controller a lander token, which is a Wayfarer's Bauble. 2, tap, sack this token, and you get to Rampant Growth. So this is great. I know you're thinking, why wouldn't I run Generous Gift? Generous Gift is the same thing. For the same cost, at instant speed, it can hit lands, and they get a 3/3 token. Well, to that I say, the decks that I build are usually not concerned with land destruction. I have a way to deal with problematic non-basics that we'll see later, but for the most part, these kinds of decks, this budget and this power level, the kind of tables that want these want not to have an experience where people are blowing up each other's lands. They don't want to be able to, they don't want to feel like they have their resource denial in the form of any kind of land destruction in their experience of the game, and that's fine. Not everyone is looking for that in Commander. And so if that's the case, if you're paying 1 and a white anyway, you should run a spell that says destroy target non-land permanent, and you give them something that's not as good as a 3/3 token. Like Stroke of Midnight is 2 and a white for an instant that destroys a non-land permanent and gives them a 1/1 human. To that I say, Emergency Eject is better because why should they get a creature at all? They should get a artifact that they have to pay mana into to find a basic, and then basic comes in tapped. So for the same reasons that Path to Exile is very good because the land they find comes in tapped, Emergency Eject finds a tapped land and they have to pay for that to happen. So anyway, I just, any of my white decks, if you see me running Emergency Eject, you're going to hear this spiel. I just think it's a great card from Edge of Eternities, and it's just not played as much as it ought to be. It's just very good. So we've seen Lauren. Lauren is a disenchant on a stick that we can also tap to have ourselves and an opponent draw a card. Redemption Arc lets us make a creature indestructible and goad it, which means we don't have to worry about it, and once we do, we can pay 1 and a white to exile it. Furia's Retribution, pardon me, I think it is Furia. This is from Kaldheim, originally. Great set, great card. This is a Saga for 1 and double white and a black. So Sagas, if you haven't seen them before, are enchantments that say when they enter, and at the start of our first main phase every turn, we put a lore counter on it, and we trigger the ability with the number that matches the number of lore counters it has. And then once the final lore counter goes on it, and that ability it triggers has resolved, we sacrifice the Saga. So we get to tell ourselves a little story. When it first comes in, we get the first lore counter, and we make a 4/4 white Angel Warrior creature token with Flying and Vigilance. That's a Serra Angel. That's awesome. A Serra Angel for 4 mana, even if one of those is black, is crazy. That's great. And then, Chapter 2, on the start of our next turn's first main phase, all of our angels, until end of turn, gain the ability to tap in order to destroy a creature with power less than that creature's power. It's not less than or equal to, but still, we can take this 4/4 Flying Vigilant Angel, attack with it with Vigilance, and then post-combat, if it's survived, tap it to destroy something power 3 or less. But if we pumped it up with one of our effects like Breena, we can tap to destroy something power 5 or less, because if it's a 6/6. It's also true that all of our angels get this. We've seen that we have several angels in this deck. We have a commander who is an angel. So if Aurelia attacks, great, we get all of the things that we would have gotten from attacks, and then we get this ability until end of turn to tap Aurelia down and just kill something. Or maybe Aurelia is bigger and we get to kill something bigger with her, and with this token, and with any of our other angels. Very nice. And then the final chapter is angels you control gain double strike until end of turn. That's this token, that's Aurelia, that's any of our other angels. Yeah, this is a card that I thought about putting in, and I'm like, I don't know if it does enough for us. But no, it does plenty for us. So yeah. Siege Gang Lieutenant is next. This is from the Modern Horizons 3 Commander product. I think this is from the Disa deck, the Graveyard Overdrive deck. Anyway, it's a 2/2 Goblin for 3 and a red with a Lieutenant ability. It says at the beginning of combat on our turn, if you control a commander, make 2/1/1 red Goblin creature tokens, and they gain haste until end of turn. So Siege Gang Lieutenant makes us 2 tokens at the start of combat that have haste. So it's the same reason, it's the same purpose in our deck as Lagomos. It gives us the ability to get multiple creatures attacking and trigger Aurelia. We do lose these creatures if they die in combat, but they still trigger Aurelia. So Siege Gang Lieutenant says, if you have Aurelia in play, attack with her and these 2 tokens, and even if the tokens don't do any damage to an opponent and they just die without killing anything else, it's like we attacked with Aurelia and got her trigger without having to have any other creatures come in. So Siege Gang Lieutenant is an enabler for for Aurelia, and for Breena, because of course we're attacking with these goblins, even if we're not also attacking with any of our other creatures. In addition, we can pay 2 and sack a goblin to do 1 damage to any target. That's just a little ping. It's not much damage. It can burn an opponent, but it can also kill creatures, even creatures who've already been dealt damage this turn during combat, if we've got goblins left over. So maybe we've done enough damage to a creature to put it 1 point away from dying. We use the Siege Gang Lieutenant to sacrifice either one of these goblin tokens that has remained around, if it has, or the Lieutenant itself, and we get that 1 extra point of damage. Finally, we have Rolling Hamsphere. This card is ridiculous from Bloomburrow Commander, but it's so good. 7 generic mana, don't get me wrong. The last 7 mana card we saw, I think, is Teysa Karlov, Teysa Envoy of Ghosts, which is also a 7/7 or a 7 mana 4/4, but is not a vehicle. The Hamsphere is a vehicle that crews for 3 and gets +1/+1 for each hamster we control. Now, we don't have any hamsters in this deck, but that's okay because when it attacks, we make 3/1/1 red hamster creature tokens, and then we get to do an amount of damage to any target equal to the number of hamsters we control. So when it attacks as a 7/7 because it will make those 3 hamsters and get 1/1 +1/+1 for each of those hamsters. So it's a 7 mana 7/7 vehicle that attacks and does a lightning bolt, which is 3 damage to any target, since that's the number of hamsters we have. If we go to our next turn and crew this again, which we might be doing using the first 3 hamsters we made, since it's crew 3, it attacks again, it makes 3 more hamsters. It now is a 10/10 because we have 6 total hamsters that it's giving it +6/+6, and it does 6 damage to any target. So we might be doing 16 damage with this the second time it attacks. The Hamsphere can take a little while to get rolling, but being able to make so many tokens that we're able to use and trigger Aurelia, that we can make something that's so big so it's not likely to die in combat when we attack with it, with Aurelia of course, or just make it even bigger with Breena if we really want to put counters on our vehicle. Yeah, we've got good options here. And that is our removal section, our interaction section. So we are running 2 Wraths. We have not seen either of them. Promise of Loyalty is 4 and a white for a sorcery that says each player puts a vow counter on a creature they control. Vow counters don't have an inherent mechanical meaning, they're just used by this spell. Each player puts a vow counter on a creature they control and then sacrifices the rest. So everyone loses all their creatures except 1. And each of those creatures can't attack us or our planeswalkers for as long as we control, or as long as they have vow counters on them. So this is another way. It's not exactly goading those creatures. We're just protected from them forever, unless those creatures are flickered or bounced and replayed or reanimated, whatever it may be. But it lets us clear the board of everything other than 1 creature on each player's playmat. And since both of our commanders are flyers, we just choose probably Aurelia to stick around since she costs more. We don't want to recast her. And we recast Breena for 5, and we're back to the races. So yeah, Promise of Loyalty is a sweet spell that can help us out a lot. We also have Elspeth's Son's Champion, which is not in this deck to really be a Wrath, but she is our one Planeswalker, and she can be a Wrath for us. 4 and double white gives us a 4 loyalty Elspeth Planeswalker that if we +1 her, we get to make 3/1/1 soldier tokens. That's great. Being able to do this is just as useful to us as the Rolling Ham Sphere, or a little more useful even than Siege Gang Commander, even though these tokens don't have haste, because we can use them to attack and get our Aurelia triggers. We can also -3 Elspeth Sun's Champion to destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. That's going to hit a lot of our creatures, in all honesty, but we're looking for a board wipe, and Elspeth can do it, so we might as well mention that she can. Finally, if we haven't used her -3 ability, and our opponents are wild enough to let us get 3 tokens 3 times, then we've got Elspeth at 7 loyalty, and we can -7 her to get an emblem that gives all of our creatures +2/+2 and flying, which is just permanent since it's an emblem. So flying is already something we've got a little theme of in this deck. +2/+2 helps us out a lot. Sure, might as well ultimate Elspeth if we can, and if not, a 7 mana spell that puts 3 counters on the board or 3 creatures into play, and then continually puts those tokens creatures into play every turn is very good for us, especially since Elspeth can be attacked by other players or by other creatures, which means those creatures aren't attacking us. Obviously, if they're goaded, they can't attack Elspeth. If there are other players they could be attacking, but the fact that we have a powerful, well-known Planeswalker card in our deck means that Elspeth is a little bit of a removal magnet, which means that removal is not getting used on our other pieces that we care about more, and is just pumping out soldiers for us every turn, and can, if we need her to, wipe the board of our big stuff, hopefully leaving behind these soldiers. So that covers our Wraths, and therefore all of our cards in the support section. We're going to look at all of our supplemental sections now, and see what else we've got there. So we're going to start with our Synergy section. These are all cards that let us do more in combat, or use what we're getting from use the resources we're otherwise getting. Sanctuary Warden is what I'm talking about. Sanctuary Warden lets us make a 1/1 token and draw a card every time it enters and attacks, and we remove a counter from one of our creatures or planeswalkers. We're going to have a lot of counters from things, thanks to Breena and our other effects. So being able to use them, like I said, for things other than just having bigger creatures is a pretty nice use. Similarly, Duelist Heritage lets us do something cool in combat. Lets us give something double strike every time creatures attack, whether or not it's our creatures. Audric Lunac Marshal, we actually have 2 Audrics in this section, is 3 and a white for a 3/3 legendary human soldier that says, at the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike until end of turn if a creature you control has first strike. You've already seen we have several creatures with first strike. The same is true for Flying, Death Touch, Double Strike, Haste, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Skulk, Trample, and Vigilance. Do we have all of these in our deck? No, we don't. We don't have any Hexproof or Indestructible. I don't know that we even have any Lifelink. I don't think we do. But do we have ways to give things double strike? We sure do. The Furja's Intervention gives all of our angels first strike during its 3rd chapter ability, which means at the beginning of that combat, all of our creatures will gain double strike because any of our creatures have it. We have flyers in this deck, so all of our creatures are going to have flying during combat on our turn, or until the end of turn at the start of our combat, because any of them do. The same is true of Vigilance and Trample, Haste for some of our tokens, Menace. We have ways to give creatures Menace. So yeah, Audric is a sweet card that goes in lots of decks, and is a lot of fun in this one to just give all of our stuff in our white and red and black spells, the creatures' keywords, just share them amongst all our creatures. Also, for 4 mana, we have another Audric Master Tactician. 2 and double white for a 3/4 legendary human soldier with first strike, helps out. And whenever Audric and at least 3 other creatures attack. So Audric cares about us attacking with 4 or more creatures, as long as Audric is one of them. If that happens though, we choose which creatures block this combat and how those creatures block. Which creatures block this combat means we can say no creatures block this combat. All of our creatures are unblockable. We can just do that if we want to. Or we can say, your creature that would die to this attacker is going to block this combat. Your other creature that would die to this attacker is going to block this combat. Notably, Audric does not let us say which creatures block this combat. Oh no, I'm sorry. Audric does get to do that. I don't know how I just totally forgot the thing I just read. Yeah, we get to say your 3/3 is going to be blocking Audric, so your 3/3 is going to die. Your 2/2 is going to be blocking this creature, so your 2/2 is going to die and our creature will survive, and so forth. We get to do all of those kinds of things. We have your 9/3 is going to block, or your 7/3, your Yargle is going to, no, Yargle's a 9/3, yeah. Your 9/3 Yargle is going to block Audric. Audric will kill it with first strike, and so Yargle dies. Audric can do a lot for us in these kinds of combats. At the very least, Audric says, as long as Audric's attacking with at least 3 other creatures, our stuff is unblockable if we want it to be. So yeah, pretty nice. That is our synergy section. Next up is our protection section. We got a lot of these cards because we care about combat, and a lot of the things we're doing in this deck require us to attack or encourage us to attack. So we want to make sure we keep our creatures safe as well as ourselves safe when we do that. Noble Heritage, we've already seen, it gives us protection from whichever player puts 2 counters on one of their creatures at the start of our upkeep, as long as we have a commander in play, and that protects us. Selfless Spirit is 1 and a white for a 2/1 spirit creature token, or spirit cleric, there we go, with flying, that if we sacrifice it, all of our creatures gain indestructible until end of turn. So a cheap, evasive creature that can attack, and whenever we need to cash it in to make our creatures indestructible, we can do that. The Swifties are next. 2 generic mana for an equipment that equips for 1 and gives the equipped creature hexproof and haste. Swiftfoot Boots, love it. Protects one of our commanders if we need it to, gives one of our commanders haste, probably not Aurelia since Aurelia has haste. But yeah, usually we use this to just protect one of our commanders, but if we wanted to put it on something else that we really want to protect, like our Rolling Hamsphere, that would be crazy since that's a vehicle, so it'll just fall off once it stops being a creature. But yeah, we've got good ways to give hexproof and of course haste as well to whatever creature we need. Frontline Medic is next. 2 and a white for a 3/3 human cleric with Battalion. If you got the reference to this ability in my Heart of the Deck speech at the start of the video, thank you for knowing Boros mechanics. It says whenever this creature and at least 2 other creatures attack, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. That's great. We just make it so all of our creatures can't die in combat? That seems pretty good to me. We just have to do the thing we already want to do with Aurelia, which is attack with 3 creatures, Frontline Medic included. And if we sacrifice the Medic, we can counter a spell with X in its mana cost unless its controller pays 3. So sacrifice the Frontline Medic to mana leak an X spell, or mana leak an X spell? What? Who expects this on a white creature? Nobody does. But this is a counterspell. I didn't even tag this creature as a way to remove spells because it's a protective effect. It protects our creatures here, and it can protect us from some kind of X spell, assuming that spell can be mana leaked. Like, yeah, what a crazy ability. I do not know the provenance of this ability for when this creature was originally printed, which was Gatecrash. So if you know what Frontline Medic is trying to stop, I assume it's some kind of Simic nonsense, let me know in the comments below. Next, we've got the Orzhov Advocist. Much like Noble Heritage, it prevents creatures that we put, that its controller puts 2 counters on from this trigger from attacking us or our planeswalkers until our next turn. Redemption Arc makes this creature indestructible and goads it, so we're protected from that creature for as long as it's in play. Not necessarily from any triggers it has, but it can't attack us and can't be destroyed, and we can exile it if we need to. Windborn Muse protects us because it's just Ghostly Prison, keeping our opponents from attacking us unless they're willing to pay the tax to do so. Promise of Loyalty protects us from whichever creature each opponent chooses not to sacrifice when we wrath, because those creatures will have vow counters on them and can't attack us or our planeswalkers. Gisela protects us by having all the damage that any source that we don't control would deal to us or our stuff, rounded up. And Teysa doesn't just have protection from creatures, but also protects us by saying, hey, if you attack us, you're going to lose your creature. It's going to just be destroyed retributively if it does combat damage to us. So yeah, a little bit of a politicky idea, but that's what it's giving us. That covers our protection section. Let's go now to our evasion section. We've got 4 cards that we can use to get past our opponent's defenders when we do all of this attacking. Frontier Warmonger gives all of our creatures menace until end of turn. Whenever they attack, one of our opponents or a planeswalker they control, which will be every time they attack, since those are our only options. I guess we could attack a battle that someone else controls, but I don't think we're going to do that. Nelly, I didn't mention this earlier with Nelly Borka, but we can sure suspect one of our creatures. If we do that, we are then goading that creature every time Nelly's attack trigger goes off. But it does give our creature menace, and if it's a creature we're not planning to block with anyway, maybe we want it to have menace, and that's okay. Audric can decide that our creatures can't be blocked at all, or if they're going to be blocked, how they would be blocked, so that's a nice way to be evasive. And Elspeth, if we get up to ultimate her, can give us the emblem that gives all of our creatures +2/+2 and flying. That covers our evasion section. So let's talk now about a little bit of burn we have in this deck, just a tiny little bit. We've seen all of these cards. Lightning Bolt can do 3 damage to any target. Scriv can put this contract aura on an opponent's creature, and if they attack us with that creature, they will lose 2 life. It's life loss, not damage, so it's not quite the same as what people think of in terms of burn, but fits in the same section. Siege Gang Lieutenant, if we sack a goblin, can do 1 damage to any target. Vengeful Ancestor does 1 damage to any goaded creature's controller when that goaded creature attacks. Prisoner's Dilemma, we've talked about how much burn damage it can do to our opponents, and Rolling Hamsphere can zot something for X damage equal to the number of hamsters we control whenever it attacks after making 3 more 1/1 hamsters. So that's our burn section. We have a section that talks about our counters as well. These are just different ways for us to put counters on our creatures and on other people's creatures. Requisition Raid can put a counter on each creature a player controls. Noble Heritage, 2 counters on one of our creatures, including, that can happen for any player at the table. Same is true of Agitator Ant, same is true of Orzhov Advocist. They all work in that same way and have different things happen when our opponents do that. And Shadrick Silverquill, one of his options, can put a 1/1 counter on each of our creatures if we're the one that we are targeting with that. So yeah, that is our counter section. Next up, we have a section called Extras. These are all cards that we've seen 3 of that give us extra of something. Duelist Heritage can give one of our creatures double strike. Furia's Retribution can give all of our angels double strike until end of turn. Gisela doubles the amount of damage dealt to any opponent and permanent an opponent controls. And Windcrag Siege is 1 a red and a white for an enchantment that says, as it enters, we can choose Mardu or Jeskai. I'm going to talk about Jeskai first. It says, at the beginning of your upkeep, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. It gains lifelink and haste until end of turn. So we do have lifelink in this deck. So this is something that Audric can share with our whole board. It is possible we might choose Jeskai in this deck if we are looking for another repeatable token creating effect like Siege Gang Lieutenant or Lagamos, so that we can get enough creatures attacking that we're able to trigger Aurelia. That's a possibility. However, the Mardu option is if a creature attacking causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So if any creature attacking, it doesn't say a creature we control attacks, this doubles the attack triggers on Aurelia and the attack trigger on Breena, whether it's us attacking or not. If those things would trigger, they trigger an additional time. This is an amazing amount of extra value for us, so much so that I don't think that the Jeskai effect is going to happen that often. It's nice to have it as an option if we think we're going to need it, but being able to attack with 5 creatures and then get 6 damage to each opponent, gain 6 life, draw 2 cards, and that's all off of just Aurelia, not any of our other triggers that we might get from Breena or our Titan triggers from the things we've seen already, like Windcrag Siege can do a lot for us. That covers our extras section. Let's go now to our pump section. We have 2 little ways that we can pump up creatures beyond just with counters. Elspeth has that emblem, of course, +2/+2 to everything, and they gain flying. And Angelic Sellsword makes mercenaries, which can themselves give +1/+0 at sorcery speed to a creature by tapping those mercenaries. So yeah, even though that's a small amount of pump, we get a mercenary every time the Sellsword or another non-token creature enters under our control. So yeah, that can be something. Finally, we have our tokens section. These are all the ways, many of which we've seen, not all of them though, that we have to make tokens to increase the number of creatures that we're able to get counters, or able to get triggers from our commanders, both by attacking with something we don't mind losing, so we can get triggers from Breena, and so that we can attack with more things, we get more and better triggers from Aurelia. So we're going to start with the Loyal Apprentice. 1 and a red for a 2/1 human artificer with haste that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, make a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, and it gains haste until end of turn. So this is similar to what we've seen already with the Lieutenant ability of the Siege Gang Lieutenant, but rather than making 2 1/1s that get haste until end of turn, we get a single 1/1 flyer that gets haste until end of turn. And of course, being a flyer, it's going to stick around for us because it's likely not to die, and it's just nice to be able to have. So yeah. We've got a Seer Slicer Goblin, which is sort of a worse version of the last card in some ways and better in others. 1 and a red for a 2/1 Goblin Warrior from Foundations with a raid trigger. At the beginning of our end step, if we attacked this turn, we get a 1/1 red Goblin creature token. So while this is not a token that comes in with haste at the start of combat, it does give us a token that we are going to be able to use to block with or attack with next turn if we attacked, and we're probably going to be attacking every turn that we're able to. So yeah, the Goblin gives us a nice ability to keep pumping out more tokens every turn without having to worry about using them in combat that turn if that's what we wanted. Anna Bakal Thousandth Moon is next. Another different way of making tokens that works interestingly with our commanders. 1 and a red and a white for a 1/2 legendary human soldier that says whenever you attack with 1 or more non-gnome creatures, put a 1/1 counter on Anna Bakal, then make a number of 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens that are tapped and attacking equal to the number of counters on Anna Bakal. So by putting extra counters on Anna Bakal with Breena or any of our other effects, then whenever we get to attack, as long as we attacked with anything other than just a gnome, then Anna Bakal will make a number of attacking 1/1 gnomes equal to the number of counters on them, and Anna Bakal will make more if we've got more of those counters on it. Interestingly, these tokens are tapped and attacking. This is an attack trigger, so it will not work with Aurelia the way you want it to, because Aurelia cares about when we attack how many creatures we have, not how many creatures we end up having attack. And so if you were to say, well, I want to stack Anna Bakal's trigger in such a way so that we get these attacking creatures before Aurelia's trigger resolves, that way I get more Aurelia stuff, right? Unfortunately, that's not how Aurelia works. Yeah, she's going to have to count the number of creatures we're attacking with when we declare them as being attackers. So even though we get a bunch of gnomes, they won't give us more or better triggers from Aurelia, but we do get those attacking creatures. So we get a bunch of gnomes that hopefully will stick around after the fact, and if they don't, that's okay, because something that's nice about these is it says they're tapped and attacking. It doesn't say tapped and attacking, the same creature or the same opponent or planeswalker or whatever that our other creatures are attacking. So as long as we attack with, let's say, one of those goblins that Seer Slicer Goblin gave us, if we attack opponent A with it, Anna Bakal will get a counter and make a number of attacking gnomes equal to the number of counters on it, and we could send those gnomes at other players, so that maybe at the end, if we have an effect that cares about having attacked multiple players, or having done damage to multiple players, I should say, since these tokens come in tapped and attacking, that doesn't mean that they are declared as attackers, so we didn't attack with them even though they are attacking. A little confusing with the kind of things we're doing, but being able to manufacture more and more tokens that we can use on later turns is still quite powerful. Next up, we've seen Lagomos makes us the 2/1 trampling hasty elemental at the start of combat that we get to sacrifice at our end step. So you see all of these are doing something similar to each other, but slightly different, and so we get a little texture to our play. Also true of Urabrask's Forge. 2 and a red for an artifact that says at the beginning of combat on our turn, we put an oil counter on it. Oil counters are just used by Urabrask's Forge. They don't have inherent mechanical meanings. And when we do that, we then make an X1 red Phyrexian horror creature token with trample and haste, where X is the number of oil counters on this artifact, and we sacrifice that token at the beginning of the next end step. So the first turn this comes down, assuming we get it down pre-combat, we make a 1/1. Then the next turn we make a 2/1, then a 3/1, then a 4/1. So it just keeps making us a token that we are able to declare as an attacker, which helps both of our commanders, that is bigger every turn. We're going to sacrifice it at the end step, so we don't care if it dies. because we'll get a new one next turn that's a single power bigger than the last one. So yeah, this is a pretty fun card to play in a lot of different decks, but it's another way in this deck that we get at the start of your combat, make a token or a couple of tokens that you can then use to attack that turn. We've seen Windcrag Siege. It's another one of those. It's just we make the token at our upkeep, but that's only if we choose Jeskai with it. We're usually choosing Mardu, so all of our attack triggers get doubled. Combat Calligrapher, as we've talked about, makes a 2/1 flyer that's attacking the relevant opponent. Again, not being declared as an attacker, so same issue as the gnomes from Anapakal, but still useful to us. Furious Retribution makes us a 4/4 angel with flying and vigilance. Sieging Lieutenant makes us those 2 goblins at the start of combat on our turn if we control a commander. Angelic Sellsword gives itself, or has, and gives all of our other non-token creatures essentially creature fall, make a 1/1 mercenary. Shadric Silverquill can make us an Inkling if we want. Elspeth can make us 3 soldiers. Sanctuary Warden, whenever we have it enter or attack, can eat a counter from a creature or planeswalker we control to make a 1/1 citizen and draw us a card. Silverwing Squadron we haven't seen yet. This is 5 and a white for a human knight with flying and vigilance, with power and toughness each equal to the number of creatures we control. So the wider we go, the happier Aurelia is and the bigger Silverwing Squadron is. Flying and vigilance, so this can be a Sarah Angel or bigger for us. And when it attacks, we make a number of 2/2 white knight creature tokens, each with vigilance, equal to the number of opponents we have. So kind of the same way that Elspeth is making 3 soldiers and Siege Gang Lieutenant is making 2 goblins. This is at the beginning of combat. This is when we activate Elspeth's +1. Silverwing Squadron triggers when it attacks. But we're going to get 3 knights that are not attacking. They just have vigilance, so they're waiting around for next turn for us to be able to use them. And then trigger Aurelia, trigger Breena, whatever other triggers we need. So this is a really cool flying vigilant creature that makes a whole bunch of tokens and just gets bigger as our board gets bigger. We've seen the Rolling Hamsphere. It makes 3 1/1 hamsters whenever it attacks. And Teysa makes us a 1/1 flying spirit whenever any creature deals combat damage to us and we destroy it. Technically, Teysa makes us that spirit whenever a creature deals combat damage to us, whether or not we destroy it. Even if an indestructible creature deals combat damage to us, her ability will resolve, fail to destroy the creature, but it doesn't target, so it still makes us the spirit whether or not that creature dies. Neat. And that covers all of these spell sections of our deck. As usual, we're going to go over our land base now, starting with our basics. We're running 15 basics. We are mostly white in this deck. We could even go lower on our black production if we wanted to be perfectly proportional to the pips on our spells, but I like to run a minimum of 2, preferably 3, even in our most minority color, if that color is represented on our commanders, because we want to make sure we have a better than average chance of being able to play our commanders on curve. Since Breena is white and black, we want to make sure Breena is going to be able to be playable on turn 3. So we're running 3 swamps. We've got 4 mountains, which is still more than we need for the red production we have, and plenty of plains to go along with it. So yeah, that's our basic count. But those are not the only basic type lands in our deck. We've got 3 bicycle lands. We'll use Glittering Massif as our example. This is a mountain and a plains that comes in tapped. So inherently it taps for red or white, and it has these 2 types. We can also cycle it for 2 generic mana, meaning we can discard it from our hand after paying 2 to draw a card. Something we might do much like with Mind Stone if we want to cash it in for a card later on, or if we're just desperate for card draw early on, which is not a problem this deck has. So this is a sweet card to be able to find if we are able to find just a plains from, let's say, Knight of the White Orchid. So yeah, it'll bring that card into play untapped with the Knight of the White Orchid. Glittering Massif comes in tapped, however. So we did find a plains, but it's also a red source for us. Or it's a plains and a black source if we got the Umbral Expanse. We can find either of those with our Knight. And in any case, all of these have basic types, so they're relevant to our check lands. Check lands, like Isolated Chapel, say they tap for one of 2 colors, and they come in tapped unless we control either a plains or a swamp, or rather the one of the 2 basic types that corresponds to the colors it taps for. So Dragonskull Summit taps for red or black, comes in untapped if we control a swamp or a mountain, which includes Umbral Expanse, because it is a swamp, Glittering Massif, because it is a mountain. So all 3 of these check lands will come in untapped if any of these 3 bicycle lands are in play, because Canyon Slough is a swamp or a mountain. So cares about mountains, cares about swamps and mountains, cares about swamps. Pretty sweet. So these bicycle lands add to our basic count and make it so it's easier for our check lands to come in untapped. If you were to want to upgrade the check lands, I recommend the slow lands, which are currently, at time of recording, being reprinted in Secrets of Strixhaven. I assume we're going to get the allied colors slow lands reprinted in Reality Fracture later this year. But yeah, that's a fine upgrade to these, and they have gotten cheaper, but they're still not as cheap as the check lands. And if you wanted to upgrade the bicycle lands, chalk lands are always a good choice, just much more expensive. These are our 5 fixing lands. Of course, we're running Command Tower. It's an untapped land that taps for 1 mana of any color in our commander's color identity, so white, black, or red in this deck. It's Arcane Signet as a land. It's an untapped 3-color land. Of course we're running this. We would run this if it was tapped and called Passive Path of Ancestry, because this is a tapped land with the same text as Command Tower. So solid, it makes all 3 of our colors. Even if it comes in tapped, we're running it. And when we use its mana to cast a creature spell that shares a creature type with our commander, we scry one. So in this deck, we have 4 angels and 2 birds. We don't have any warlocks other than Breena, but those 4 angels and 2 birds don't include the angel and the bird that are in our command zone, because Aurelia and Breena share types with themselves, of course. So that's a total of 8 different creatures in our deck that we can get a scry from Path of Ancestry from. We're also running Exotic Orchard. If Command Tower is the land version of Arcane Signet, Exotic Orchard is the land version of Felwar Stone. It taps for 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. So everything I said about the Felwar Stone is just as true here. It's also the case that if our opponent is running Exotic Orchard, their Exotic Orchard sees our lands, and our Exotic Orchard sees their Exotic Orchard. Meaning, Exotic Orchard, ours, will tap for any color that our other lands could produce, since it works that way. It's reciprocal for their Exotic Orchard as well. So yeah, pretty neat. We're running Myriad Landscape. This is a way of accelerating in the land base. It's a tap land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap, and sack it to search our library for up to 2 basic lands that share a land type. So in this deck, 2 swamps, 2 mountains, or 2 plains. Then we get to put those on the battlefield tapped and shuffle. So although they come in tapped, and the Myriad Landscape comes in tapped, and we have to pay 2, tap, and sack it in order to do this, it is turning 1 land drop into 2 lands in play, and it's finding whichever color we need more of, assuming we have those basics left in our library. So yeah, it's slow acceleration, if you will pardon the oxymoron, and it's solid for being able to search up a color in a 3-color deck that's not running green. We've also got Temple of the False God. Not everyone's favorite land, but this is an untapped land that taps for 2 colorless mana, so it's a soul land. We just can't activate it at all unless we control 5 or more total lands, including Temple of the False God. Which means, if we get our opening hand and it's a swamp and a Temple of the False God and no other mana sources, we probably want a mulligan. But if we get this out as our 5th land, we're jumping from making 4 mana to making 6 mana. Acceleration in the early game is the most valuable acceleration, but it's still valuable mid and late game. We have a few 7-mana spells, and we want to be able to double spell as much as we can. Temple of the False God, much like Sol Ring, gets us there, just not as quickly. We've got all 3 of our pain lands. We'll use Sulphurous Springs as an example. These are the same as our talismans. They are untapped lands that tap for colorless mana, or 1 of 2 colors if we're willing to let them do a damage to us. Everything I said about the talismans in the acceleration section is just as true here. Yeah, put these in your decks. They're untapped duels. Bicycle lands are not the only dual-type lands we're running. We've got the Tango lands as well. These are dual-type lands that come in tapped unless we control 2 or more basic lands. So they're not as good in their chances of coming in untapped as the slow lands I mentioned earlier as upgrades to the check lands. But they do have basic types, which means Eclipse Step can be fetched with Knight of the White Orchid. So this is a solid way for us to get a untapped black source that we fetch with our 2-mana creature if we already have 2 basic lands in play, which is not hard to do. We've got 15 basics in this library. It's fine. And these of course, all 3 have dual types. so they add to our total count of lands that have basic types to them. Meaning all of our check lands are going to look for these and be all set, since we've got 21 cards with basic types. Again, if you wanted to upgrade a Tangle land, I might suggest a Shock land, or you could go with a Surveil land, maybe for the Bicycle lands, since they come in tapped anyway, and so do the Surveils. Again, all of these are much more expensive, but if you have these lands already in your collection, or you're looking to expand your land collection, these are good options for you. We're running Nomad Outpost. This is a tri-land. It comes in tapped and makes all 3 of our colors. So it's a worse Path of Ancestry, which is itself a worse command tower. And we're still running this because it's a tap land that makes all of our colors. That's great. If you wanted to upgrade this to the Savai Triome, it's much more expensive, but it's a typed tri-land that you can also cycle for 3. Pretty good. Finally, we have our utility land section. We're running Bonder's Enclave, which is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 3 and tap it to draw a card if we control a creature, power 4 or greater. I like to put this in most of my commander decks that don't have a lot of card draw already, but do have a big commander. Aurelia is power 4 or greater. Breena can make creatures power 4 or greater with her triggers, especially since those triggers can happen on opponents' turns. So Bonder's Enclave is a nice way for us to draw cards if we have the right kind of creatures, but we're not able to draw cards from them. It's not usually necessary for us to use it as a little bit of a mana sink to draw cards because we have such repeatable card draw in both of our commanders, but it's a fine option and the cost of inclusion is low, so yeah, might as well. We're running Demolition Field because Demolition Field is, as I mentioned earlier when we talked about Emergency Eject, our one-of way of dealing with non-basic lands. Even in a pod where players are not looking to get their mana denied, you do have to have an answer to lands that would supercharge someone else's game plan or would shut down ours. For example, a Rogue's Passage in a deck that is about Voltroning up and making your huge commander unblockable, or a Glacial Chasm or a Maze of Ith to stop our ability to do combat damage to an opponent. Those are lands, but they're elevated to threats, and threats need to be answered. So Demolition Field does that in a way that doesn't actually deny anyone mana. You could, of course, use this on a land that's giving your opponent mana or fixing their mana, but in those kind of pods, just don't do that. It's not nice. Unless you're playing that kind of game, respect the vibe at the table and the sort of expectation that everyone has. So Demolition Field is an untapped land that taps for colorless, or we can pay 2, tap and sack it to destroy a non-basic that an opponent controls. And then that opponent gets to search their library for a basic land and put it on the battlefield untapped. And so do we. So Demolition Field replaces itself and replaces the land that we destroyed, so no one is down a land or out any mana, assuming that the land we destroyed didn't make multiple mana. So yeah, even with the fact that this is land destruction, no one's really out any resources, and we've dealt with a threat that was problematic at the table, so even, I think, the most land destruction averse pods will not have any objection to the Demolition Field. But we are running Rogue's Passage ourselves. This is a sweet land that comes in untapped, taps for colorless, or we can pay 4, tap it, and a creature can't be blocked this turn. This is another political land we can use. Obviously, we can use this on our own creatures to make them unblockable, but we've got plenty of evasion in our deck, and we're not usually needing that. But it's fine if we do. We can use the Rogue's Passage. Or we can make a deal with an opponent and say, look, opponent A, I know you want to attack opponent B, but you're worried about being blocked. I will use my Rogue's Passage to make your thing unblockable if you leave me alone for a turn cycle, or you take the 2+1/+1 counters that Noble Heritage is going to offer you on my next turn. And they might say, yeah, that's a good deal. I'll agree to that. Go ahead and activate your Rogue's Passage. And we say, no. You have to attack first. Because if you don't attack before we activate this, we will make your creature unblockable, and then you could attack us with it, and it wouldn't be blockable. And they'll say, that's fine. You've been a fair dealer so far during this game. I will declare attacks and trust you. And we'll say, great. Now that you've attacked, we activate a Rogue's Passage. Your creature gets in unblockably, and you get to do damage. And we think to ourselves, they used their attack step to make one of their creatures probably tapped so it's not able to block us or anyone else this turn cycle, and they did damage to our other opponent. So we're ahead in 2 ways. Or the third way you can use Rogue's Passage, besides for your own creatures or politically, is just by sneaking it in there. Maybe opponent A attacks opponent B without making a deal, and we just say, oh, by the way, your biggest creature is unblockable, Rogue's Passage. And they say, both players are like, wait, what? Because so often in Commander, players don't involve themselves in two other players, combat with the attacker and the defender. So Rogue's Passage can make an exciting moment at the table, and similarly to with the political version of this, it helps us use an opponent's resources to hurt a different opponent. Pretty good. Next we have Slayer's Stronghold. This is an untapped land, taps for colorless, or if we pay a red and a white, our two most represented colors, and tap it, target creature gets +2/+0 and vigilance and haste until end of turn. So of course we can use this on our own creatures, but again we can use it politically or apolitically, in all the same three ways that we could use Rogue's Passage, to give a little bit of a baby trumpet blast. Vigilance is solid, and haste. We use this on an opponent's creature after it's attacked. It doesn't gain the vigilance, so we don't have to worry about the fact that vigilance would make it so they can still block us, because they're getting vigilance and haste, but they're not able to use them. They just get this +2/+0, and that's pretty good. Maybe that changes the combat math, and we do this post blockers to make it so a creature that wasn't going to trade does trade. Pretty good ways to use this. Plus, of course, we use this with our own creatures. If we use this on our Angelic Sellsword before it attacks, even if it doesn't have any counters or any other pump on it, it now has 6 power, so it's attacking and drawing us a card. Lots of good ways to use this. Finally is Vault of the Archangel. Not doing the same things you would expect in a deck like this, but it gives us the ability to make a big swing that forces choices on our opponents. So an untapped land that taps for colorless, or if we pay 2 a white and a black, all of our creatures get Death Touch and Lifelink until end of turn. So that lifelink is pretty solid for us. We have a few ways to gain life in this deck, particularly Aurelia, but gaining Death Touch? A lot of the times, like I mentioned earlier, that is pseudo-evasion, so it protects our creatures from dying and trading in combat, because our opponents don't want to lose their creatures. But since this affects all of our creatures, maybe it forces them to make some choices about what they do want to block with, and since Death Touch is going to mean trades are happening, we're using this as a way to remove their creatures. And it's costing us creatures in the process, perhaps, but often many of our creatures on the ground are tokens anyway, so we're not worried about it. And we also have the ability to have other effects like Menace in this deck. Menace and Death Touch is crazy because it means if you block this creature, you're going to lose 2 of your creatures. So it's an automatic 2-for-1 in our land base, if we set that up, which we easily can. So yeah, Vault of the Archangel is a lot of fun, even in a deck like this, simply because Death Touch and Lifelink for a combat-based deck, sure, why not? And that about sums it up. Again, while scheduled Pride events are already over for the month, nothing stops you from playing this as a Rule 0 deck, even and especially during June. So thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support what I do here, make sure to like and subscribe, ring the bell if you want to be notified when my videos go live, consider joining my Patreon at patreon.com/secondmonitormagic or becoming a member of this YouTube channel, and remember that magic is fun. You should play more Magic.